Hi, this is Misha, and this is part 2 in our series, kind of re-looking at the Carcano. Part 1, we looked at the long infantry rifle, the 1891 and the 9141. And in this episode, we're going to look at the Cavalry carbine. Really, right after Italy adopted the 6.5mm cartridge in 1891, and then the infantry rifle in 1892, they adopted a carbine version in 1893, and that was this rifle here. This is a much shorter and lighter version. The long infantry rifle has a 30.7-inch barrel. This carbine has a 17.7-inch barrel. So we're 13 inches shorter. Not only does this save a lot of length, this saves a lot of weight as well. As you see, we already have a cutback stock here. We have a short upper handguard. Now it's worth pointing out that the original pattern of this carbine from the 19th century, the first ones lacked this little handguard, but they soon added it and then retrofitted it to older guns. We have a similar rear sight to the rifle, but much shorter. Rather than going up to 2,000 meters, this goes to about 15 meters here, 1,500, sorry, with a battle sight at 300. The bolt is pretty well the same system, but we have a turn down handle. Now the original carbines would have a hex cut barrel here. This is a later production one from the 1930s, 1934 I believe. 1935, sorry. So we have the round barrel, but we'll get into that in a bit. Also, we've gone from the bottom sling swivels to these side style with little rollers to keep the sling from binding. Pretty neat. And we have a trap door in the buttstock for a cleaning rod. This one even has one in it still. Two-piece cleaning rod. That is because, as you can tell, there's not really room for a rod under the barrel. Instead, we have this folding spiker bayonet. Sorry, it's been on, guys. There we go. That latch all the way down. Pretty long and thin. But it gave Cavalry a bayonet system. Now it's worth noting that there are several patterns of locking. This one has the lever lock. There's one that's just a spring lock, and there's the round push button lock that's probably the most common. This whole bayonet housing, where we have the bayonet itself, this block it's on, and the front sight, would go through many variations and combinations of features. As many as 9 different sub-variants of this whole thing exist. So, yeah. This still feeds from the standard 6-round in-block clips. Still the standard trigger system. So, mechanically, it's just the same, but much shorter. As I said, these would go into production in 1893, and they would produce them in modest but still respectable numbers until World War I, and then they would up production, of course, because of the war. Not only would these be issued to cavalry, they would also be issued to other specialist vehicle crews, really anyone needing kind of a PDW weapon. This thing is very light and handy compared to the rifle, and we even have an integrated bayonet for emergency type use. After World War I, and after the end of 1918, these would go out of production for some time. However, they would reintroduce them in 1932 and make them until about 1938, at least in this pattern here. The 1930s one, which this is here, still have the adjustable sights, but we've gone to the round barrel. So a few different minor changes. But this is still an 1891 Cavalry carbine. However, in 1938, that would change. This is a so-called M91 38 carbine. And we'll get into more about the whole 38 and M91 38 situation in episode 3. But for right now, let's just say that this was a simplification that was designed and made for World War II, with the biggest change being a fixed rear sight, no adjustments. This is just a 300-meter battle sight. These also lacked the game twist rifling, but otherwise are pretty well the same. This has the push button style bayonet release, which locks itself. As you can see, it's a little easier to use compared to the lever system. Flip over here. Just a big button. Still have the short handguard. Side sling mounts. Butt plate with the cleaning rod in it. Now, it's worth pointing out that the Brescia arsenal kept on using the adjustable rear sight in these, but everyone else switched over to the 91-38 pattern rear sight. This is still firing 6.5 millimeter, and they would introduce this version around 1940 and produce these until at least 1943. These would see, again, quite a bit of use in the war. And remained in service until the late 40s, early 50s, when, as with a lot of other Carcanos, they would be phased out in favor of the M1 Grand and M1 Carbine. To me, though there are plenty of other Carcanos we'll get into, this is really one of the most interesting and iconic carbines out of Italy because of this really neat folding bayonet and just how short, light, handy it is. It's just a really creative design that doesn't look like any other bolt-action rifle of its day. As with the infantry rifle, it's very dependable, durable. So it works well in the trenches and doesn't require a whole lot of maintenance, and it's quite cost effective to mass produce. That's probably why they kept making these until the middle of World War II. So these were in production for a good 50 years on and off at least. Well, if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. If you liked the video, please click like. If you haven't already subscribed and like this kind of content, we'd welcome it if you would do so. Please check out the next episodes for more hopefully interesting Carcanos and Carcano history. This is Misha. We'll catch you then.